What's up, everybody? Jensen Cummings here. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. This episode of Best Served fresh ideas, new approaches to the restaurant model. As you guys have seen, we're kind of parsing out in channels so we can focus conversations on the topics that are important to our guests and to specific parts of our audience. Great show today. Irene Lee from Mei Restaurant out in Boston is on. Irene, great to see you. Thanks for being on.
Thanks so much for having me. So when we think about what creative Chinese American food means, it's not about being authentically, traditionally Chinese, because that's not us. And so the food we cook is about being authentic to our experience, being Asian American, growing up in Boston, having just a very multicultural upbringing. And I think that, we still exist because a lot of people identify with that. What I love most is when other Asian Americans come to the restaurant and immediately recognize, this is the kind of thing that I would have scrounged together after school with a combination of American junk food and the classic stuff in our family's freezer. Again, that's being seen in a way that the guest sees us and we also see them. And so I think for me, that is a very special version of the guest experience. Sharing our P&L with the public, to me, it was kind of the logical extension of sharing it with the staff. I think a lot of diners still want the kind of intimacy where they know what is going on behind the scenes. They feel like an insider at their favorite restaurant. And what better way to give them that than to say, here's our profit and loss statement. And when you come into the restaurant, you can actually look at it with the insider's perspective that includes, oh yeah, we paid this much for that, and this cost that much, and don't drop that jar of honey on the ground because that's really expensive. That's an expensive accident. And so I think that we're fortunate to have a sort of target market that is very curious. And they always want to know what the best practices are, how to be a good consumer, how to be an ethical consumer. And I think that unless we actually show them the sort of dollars and cents behind that, it's very hard to communicate why food should have the value it does, why diners should make certain choices over other ones. The idea is that good profit is achieved when you didn't have to exploit anyone really horribly to make it. And bad profit is when you're selling someone short. If your customer is getting the short end of the stick because you're using crappier ingredients, if your staff is getting the short end of the stick because you're not paying them overtime or paying them properly, or if you are, just ruining the environment. That is also a method of exploitation that our industry is pretty expert at. And so the idea that, generating good profit and then sharing that good profit, I think is sort of a key driver of how we keep moving things forward.